A little bit different background now. I'm actually doing this from my home office right now, and so it's a little late here in the Central Time Zone for my friends in the Pacific Time Zone. Probably still a little bit sunny there, maybe rainy in the Pacific Northwest, from what I understand, but that's okay. I'm not bragging. It was 71 and sunny here today. I'm not bragging. I promise. Just kidding. Miss everybody in the Pacific Northwest. Going to be back there to do some business very, very soon. But I wanted to jump into the 9.5 things you need to know when selling your house. As usual, we update this every single week. Now, for this year, we're going to be doing a few special things. I'm going to be bringing in some guest speakers to give some regional specific context on real estate because there is a big difference with the areas that we serve in the Pacific Northwest versus Central Oklahoma. There's actually a lot of price difference. There's a lot of transaction difference and some nuances in the transaction for my Pacific Northwest investors that are bringing money to Oklahoma that you need to know about. But let's dive into the 9.5 things. Number one, as always, is pricing. You've got to price the house correctly. I'm going to give you a little bit of a horror story, okay? And it's a new one. I just closed out on a listing not too long ago that had sat on the market for a very long period of time. The listing was overpriced. Seller decided to kind of push the market a little bit. That's okay. You can do that, except we got caught when the interest rate started going up very rapidly. And what you might not think about is that seller expectations actually lag behind the market anywhere from 4 to 6 months. Meaning, if pricing right now is going down, most sellers are going to truly comprehend that in their situation 4 to 6 months from now. So there's a bit of a delay there. And that's what happened to these folks. And so we found ourselves chasing the market downwards. As a seller, trust me when I tell you, that is not a fun position to be in. So pricing, as always, is paramount. It's even paramount on steroids now because it's so important to get that right. Secondly, the transaction timeline. And you guys have heard me talk about this a ton, but I want to review it real quick because there are some different forms and things like that, and I'll let you know when those come into play. First of all, in getting the property listed, it takes us about a week from listing contract when you hire myself and my team for us to get that property on market is about a week. And so we need to have ample time to do that. Secondly, there are some more transparencies in the listing contract now that we have to put in the Northwest that have to do with buyer agent commissions. I'll deal with that when we chat one-on-one. If you want to book an appointment with me to talk about that, buyer agent commissions do vary greatly in the areas that we serve. So sellers, as you know, you traditionally pay for that. And so you want to make sure that you know exactly what that buyer agency commission is in your area. And I'd be happy to answer those questions for you. Feel free to go ahead and DM me either on my personal Facebook, Tanner Realty Group, YouTube, LinkedIn, however you're watching this, okay? So the transaction timeline, once you get that listing contract into place, about a week for us to go live on the market. Once we have a contract, we get an offer. It's a huge day for celebration. It's awesome. And once that contract is signed around, all parties agree on all of the terms, that's when the clock starts. First thing that's due is the earnest money that the buyer deposits with the escrow company. Now, we've got our preferred escrow companies, both in the Northwest as well as in Oklahoma. Would love to chat with you about those. There's some fantastic sales reps from those companies, along with some amazing escrow closers that we work with. We have chosen them specifically for their level of communication because not all escrow companies are created equal. They might ultimately do the same thing, but they're not all created equal. I'd love to talk to you more about that if you have questions. So the earnest money is due in 3 business days. In 10 calendar days in most states, in some others, it's 10 business days. I'm thinking of you, Oregon. The repair addendum is due, meaning the buyer and seller come together and they agree on any repairs and negotiations that need to happen within those 10 days. So it's very, very important. Those timelines are correct. After that satisfied, that's really where the lender and the underwriters and the title company take over. They do all of their thing in the back. They get us ready for closing. About a week before we officially close, you'll be invited into the office at the escrow company, the title company, as sometimes it's called, for a closing signing process. Okay. You go through, you sign all the paperwork. Closing actually legally happens at the county that you reside in and that the property is in, because what happens then is the deed is transferred from one party over to another. In your case, you as the seller over to the buyer. Once that happens, unless it's agreed upon, you lose access to the property. You legally need to give them keys to the property. All of your any possessions that are left on the property at 9:01 p.m. in the state of Washington, at 5:01 p.m. in the state of Oregon, and at 5:01 p.m. in the state of Oklahoma legally become the property of the buyer. So you want to make sure that all of your stuff is out of there and done. And even if you don't want it, you consider it junk, you still need to get it out of there anyway, because by contract that you've signed, you have agreed to leave that property in the best condition you possibly can. So we can talk more about that. Feel free to DM me. I'll give you all the details and particulars on that. Photography is still a huge piece of the transactional pie in this day and age. And the reason I say that is because listing inventory is going up, right? And so you're going to have more competition for your property transaction, for your property to get purchased. The buyers now have more options than they did about a year and a half to 2 years ago. So the goal of that still photography is to make those look so darn good, accurate, by the way, but still so darn good that people want to raise their hand and say, hey, you know what? I want to take a look at that place. The pictures look amazing. Now, we want to give an accurate representation, but we want it to be a good professional representation as well. Video is huge, is paramount, is key, is critical. I can't think of another adjective to describe it, okay? You got to do good video in order to get top dollar for your property in this day and age. We have been through the pandemic. I don't care about your feelings about the pandemic. I don't care if you're a masker, anti-masker. I don't care. But one undisputable fact that the pandemic did is make everyone much more reliable. I clearly need some more coffee tonight. My apologies. It's made everybody more reliant on video. Video is huge in marketing your property, and you want to get this right. It takes a good both drone videographer as well as a on-the-ground videographer to get your property accurately represented and put it in the best light possible. 3D tours, they're not as much in fashion right now, but they're still very, very important, because what they can do is not just give a 3D tour to where you're hopping around different rooms digitally on your computer. It can also provide a 2D floor plan, which is highly beneficial if you want to place furniture, if you kind of want to print that out and imagine where your furniture would go, where your children's rooms would be, where you would put things in the primary bedroom, all of that good stuff. Even from a backyard perspective, we like to shoot the backyard when we do those 3D tours. So it's kind of helpful. The next thing you really want to remember, and this is number 6 if you're keeping track at home, is MLS representation. With listing inventory going up, there are going to be a bunch of buyer's agents that are anxious to get their client the best price possible on that property. And you need me backing you up to make sure you can negotiate well with those buyer's agents and really going to bat for you, stepping up on your behalf to make sure that's taken care of. Number 7, digital marketing. Again, one of the things that the pandemic made us super reliant upon was social media. So guess what? Google, YouTube, which is the same thing in case you didn't know, Facebook, Instagram, which are the same company in case you didn't know, LinkedIn, are all places that you need to be advertising your property. Right now, you found me through this video on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube. So, guess where we're going to advertise your property? All the same places and then some. You need to have it out in front of as many eyeballs as possible to not have competition work against you when that listing inventory is going up, but have competition working for you so you have more buyers seeing the property you have for sale. Next is you need a transaction coordinator and someone to really map out the timeline for you. As I'm talking through all this stuff, I'm going through it really, really quickly, by the way. This is only going to be about a 12 or a 13-minute video, but there are so many steps in a real estate transaction and they vary from state to state. You need someone who actually has a transaction coordinator backing them up. Now, one of my favorite dad jokes, it was on a bunch of different sitcoms, is who has two thumbs and a transaction coordinator? This guy, right? So you need somebody backing up the person backing you up to make sure that all of our details are lined up, our transaction timelines are accurate, and everything is going to close on time. That is exactly what Tanner Realty Group does for you, and we would be honored to do that for you as well. Our transaction coordinators are phenomenal people. Now, number 9, what turns off potential buyers from your property? You've heard me talk about this before, and it's kind of morphed over the pandemic a little bit, but really it's anything divisive. Anything from a neon green wall in the living room to political paraphernalia all over your house. I had buyers one time that we went to a neighborhood, super cute craftsman house in Portland, okay? And they saw the political sign in the front yard and they said, I'm not going in there. Now, I thought they were nuts, okay? Not because of the political affiliation, but because they were going to let their own political affiliation dictate what neighborhood they lived in, how much they were going to pay for a house, what house they were actually going to look at. It was crazy because the house that they passed up was a fantastic deal. So make sure you make your house as neutral as possible. Everything from the political affiliation to the wall color to even the backyard decor. Don't do anything too funky if you're trying to sell your house. Don't do anything overly tropical that somebody's going to say, oh man, that's a lot of work. I don't want to work on that. So make sure you make it as neutral and as simple as you possibly can. Now, nine and a half things you need to know, right? What's the half? Those of you that have heard this seminar before, you know the half is the one thing you absolutely positively have to do in order to sell your house for top dollar in the most time efficient manner. Clean it. Give it a good deep clean. I was doing an open house a little while ago. I'm not going to tell you exactly when, okay? But in this open house, it wasn't clean. And guess who it turned off? Potential buyers. Now, it wasn't in horrific shape, but there was the occasional dead bug in the windowsill, right? They didn't like that. They're like, oh, no, they clearly don't care for this place well. And they took off and they did not make an offer on the house. Now, fortunately, somebody else came along later. They saw past all that. And the house is long since under contract. Probably it closed out by now. But point being, give that house a good, deep clean. When people come into a house, I don't want to smell fresh baked cookies. I want to smell pine sol. Okay. That's really what we're going after. We want people to smell the clean when they come into a house. Now, hey, in certain areas in the Northwest, people smell fresh baked cookies. They turn around and run out because they got a gluten allergy. Now, that happens in the Midwest too, but you get the idea. The Northwest, a little bit more known for that. From what I've heard, you could actually rob a bank with a bagel in some places in the Pacific Northwest. I'm kidding. I grew up there. I can make jokes. It's all right. But make sure your house has a good, deep clean. If you need a list of cleaners, be happy to help out with that. Hey, thank you so much for coming to the seminar today. At the ticker below, are my phone numbers, one for the Oklahoma number, one for the Pacific Northwest number. There's my email address. Feel free to respond to this and I'll reach out to you. Would love to chat with you about, even if you're thinking about in the future, hey, you know what, Mike, I'm thinking about another year, maybe retiring and moving, downsizing, upsizing, whatever it is you're needing to do. Please feel free to reach out. Give us a call at the numbers listed below, and we would love to have a conversation with you. Again, I'm Mike Tanner with Tanner Realty Group. Have a great evening, and thanks so much for tuning in. Bye bye.